What truly matters is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. That all changes, starting right here and right now.
It's 11:45 Eastern. It's time for A Radio's Morning Moment.
You're listening to A Radio.
Thank you for joining us. You're listening to A Radio, and this is the Morning Moment. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. You can find us on most social media platforms such as iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Go to our website, aradio.wordpress.com, for details, where you'll find more content and details on our podcasts and more. You know, I got to thinking, there's a list of things out there that we in the West are now not allowed to talk about, and it's getting longer and longer, and no one's even noticed. And the converse is also true, that we can talk about is shorter and shorter. That is, the list is shorter and shorter. Let's make a list of what we can't talk about. We're not supposed to talk about the former president, Donald J. Trump. We're not supposed to talk about the censorship on the Marxist socialist media. Oh, we can't talk about COVID-19, and I'll come back to that one. Don't want to hear anything about Agenda 21 or 2030. Also, climate change, which is all part of the same thing. Foreign interference in elections, not allowed to talk about that. Not allowed to talk about crooked judges in the United States and elsewhere. We're not allowed to talk about mass paedophilia. We're not allowed to talk about China. We're not allowed to talk about communism. We're not allowed to talk about corruption, be it judges, police, politicians, or anything else. We're not allowed to talk about, quote, ethnic groups and their effect on our culture. We're not allowed to talk about multiculturalism. We're not allowed to talk about bilingualism. We're not allowed to talk about alternate energy. Yet, we can talk about fossil fuels, as long as it's negative. We're not allowed to talk about population. We're not allowed to talk about fake news, nor free speech, nor our constitution. And I'm sure you can think of a few more that I've missed out. Oh, the Great Reset, nothing to see there. Or Taiwan, nothing to see there. I'm going to start at the beginning. Donald J. Trump. If we talk about Donald J. Trump, we're racists. We're, in America, domestic terrorists. You are evil. You are stupid. You will be monitored. And most likely, if you're living in the US, you will be on a watch list for the FBI. You remember the FBI, don't you? Those federal employees who couldn't find one United States Postal Service tractor-trailer truck, but they can find a laptop in 4 days. They are ridiculous. And this is ridiculous. The next topic we can't talk about is the censorship on Marxist socialist media. If you're a conservative, and if you're conservative thinking, and post anything remotely anti-Marxist, you will be deplatformed. That's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, etc., etc. I want you to think about that for a moment. If you say anything they don't like, it will be removed and you will be banned. It's terrifying, isn't it, when you analyse it? And it's even worse if you live in the UK, because they have Twitter police. That's what I call them. They've got actual banks of police officers sitting in rooms that should be done for something else, staring at computers, waiting for snitches to call in, if they haven't found them themselves, for somebody posting something, quote, they don't like. The question is, who are they? And how long are we going to put up with they? As far as I'm concerned, we need to identify all these police officers, and we need to make them, at the very least, persona non grata. If they want to do that job, we don't want anything to do with them. Let them shop in their own shops. Let them shop online with Amazon, who shuts everybody down. Think about that next time you shop at Amazon. They're shutting your views down. Do you really want to shop at Amazon? I'd rather shop at MyPillow. I'd buy my groceries at MyPillow if I could. Let's talk about the next one. COVID-19. You can't discuss at any level anything to do with COVID that is not approved, that is not the approved line of thought. Think about that. If you try to talk about any form of alternate treatment, you are labelled as dangerous and your comments are denigrated and again removed from Marxist media. And that includes medical experts. This is darn right dangerous. This is a communist state when you start doing this, and people will not talk about it. They're scared to talk about it. My friends in the United States will not talk about this. They're terrified because they might get their social media platform looked at. Well, screw that. Screw that. So, next I want to talk about Agenda 21 and 2030. This has been talked about by us and many others for years and blanked by all politicians. Now there's clear evidence that this proclamation is in fact being implemented. And if you don't know what it is, go to my website, aradio.wordpress.com, and click on the tab Agenda 2030. No one wants to talk about this. Another non-subject, as is climate change. This has been talked about for years, but certainly in Canada, the media has been blitzed by liberal communists, and the citizens here have no idea what climate change actually is. All the politicians talk about it non-stop, but if you dare disagree with their hypothesis, you're a heretic, or worse. Some people say you should be arrested and prosecuted. This is scary stuff. Again, you can't talk about it. Let's talk about the latest buzzwords. Foreign interference in elections. There is undoubted evidence of foreign interference, certainly in the US presidential election, yet you cannot talk about it. Otherwise, you'll be deplatformed. Again, 80 million Americans are being labelled by the Marxist Democrats and the three-letter organisations that run America, i.e. the FBI, the CIA, and a few other three-letter organisations. 80 million Americans are being labelled as domestic terrorists for daring to question a federal election result, despite the fact there are serious rumbles in several states who refuse to be dictated to by the feds. And this is a word of warning to the feds. Watch Texas, because they're not going to take this garbage anymore. I keep saying to my friends, watch Texas, because that's the key. If Biden is allowed to continue on in this Marxist doctrine that he is indoctrinating America with, Texas will leave the union. They can do whatever they like. Texas will leave. And if they want 80 million Americans to leave and their states to go with them, keep on carrying on. And as for the next item, crooked judges, there is absolute evidence of crooked judges in state and federal level, not to mention the Supreme Court of the United States. But that again is considered taboo to talk about this, for yet again, risk of being deplatformed. This is the modern day book burning. Make no mistake about that. Let's talk about political corruption. The same applies here. The deliberate Marxist Democrat policy of delay, 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 of interfering with the legal requirements of an election has resulted in those results being mute. They want you to go through all the legal proceedings, drag it on through the courts, knowing that the courts are already in their favour, knowing that it will be thrown out, or in the case of Texas, and I disagree with any learned people because they don't know what they're talking about. Sorry, it's very simple. Read the Constitution. Texas had standing. It didn't have to ask for standing. It got standing because of what it is, a state. It takes a Brit, it takes a Canadian citizen who is a naturalised Canadian to tell an American citizen that they don't know what they're talking about. What the hell has happened to the United States? And the latest high-level member of Pennsylvania state government resigned, claiming that they didn't realise they could do what they could do. That's a joke, and that's a lie, plain and simple. They knew they would just delay, resulting in the situation that they wanted. And everybody knows it, but they're scared to talk about it. Again, deplatforming. I have friends in the state of Pennsylvania, and I cannot for the life of me understand why they didn't go out and protest. I just don't get it. My God, you've got free speech in the United States. Use it before you lose it. Let's talk about another no-no subject. There are reports popping up all over the place, despite the Marxist media trying to clamp it down, of mass paedophilia. Everyone knows there's more and more evidence of organised groups all over the United States and other countries. Yet the Marxist media are refusing to cover it because it's going to lead back to politicians and Hollywood. But again, you can't talk about it. Here's another subject you can't talk about. China. Everyone that I know knows that there are connections to Biden and China. You're not allowed to talk about it. Anyone who did their homework during the 2020 election knows that. Yet it was banned by the Marxist media. So the majority of voters, supposedly, didn't know. Or should we say the majority of Democrat voters didn't know. And they didn't know they were voting for Marxist Democrats either, because the Marxist media kept it quiet. And now they're obviously having voter remorse. Bit late now, isn't it? Let's talk about communism for a minute. The Marxist Democrats are deliberately ignoring the US Constitution and marching the United States towards the first stages of government tyranny, or ignoring and bypassing the US Constitution. Yet the Marxist media are crickets. And again, you can't talk about that. Corruption. The corruption in all levels of government is denied, despite the evidence to the contrary. Here's another no-no subject. Ethnic groups and their effect, or not, on our culture. This is definitely a no-no, certainly in Canada. The liberal communists have made it so. Anyone who dares talk about this is a racist, plain and simple. That is very concerning that they have denied Canadians our constitutional and charter rights. They bend the law to make it that you can't talk about something which is happening. That's unconstitutional. And any politician who passes a law, who tries to create a regulation that interferes with our charter rights, should be removed from office. That's a purely Canadian thing, but it's got to be changed. They've got to swear an oath to our charter, and if they break that oath, they are removed. They make themselves null and void, and they have to resign. Now I'm going to talk about another subject which is taboo, certainly in Canada. This was inherited from the UK. It started in the 60s. The idea was to allow people of different ethnic backgrounds to come into a country but maintain their ethnic backgrounds. They were encouraged to keep and promote their cultures over the native culture. The result of this is, rather than assimilate into the population, it promotes cliques of people. But again, you can't talk about this because that infringes on my constitutional rights, that I can't talk about it. And yet it's a definite no-no on the Marxist media, certainly in Canada. And people know that they're losing their basic culture. The Canadian culture is being destroyed. Yet any Canadian who is born and bred in Canada knows what's going on. Yet our illustrious leader, the member of the Liberal Communist Party who is currently Prime Minister, says that Canada doesn't have a culture. Well, maybe they don't in Quebec, but Canada as a whole has many cultures which are native to this country, that created this country of Canada. And Trudeau doesn't like that. So you're a racist a bigot, a homophobe, whatever he wants to call you. No, I call myself someone who believes in free speech, Mr. Trudeau. Let's talk about bilingualism, because bilingualism is a forced culture on Canadians. When I came to Canada, I was told I had to speak one of the 2 official languages. Not both, but if you don't speak both fluently, which means French first, English second, you are disadvantaged in Canada. Bilingualism is a con. It costs us billions of dollars in Canada every year. Yet, you can't talk about it. It's a no-no subject. Again, against my Charter of Rights. Alternate energy. If you dare talk about this, or energy generally, unless it's fossil fuels and denigrate it, you are thrown out, basically. You will be deplatformed. If you dare talk about the ineffectiveness of this half-baked concept, you cannot talk about this at any level. You're just labelled a climate denier, a climate killer. And many people actually want you arrested. Well, the fake politicians do. But they never discuss the shortfalls of quote-unquote alternate energy. Canada is a cold climate in the wintertime and a hot climate in the summer. We get lots of high winds, we get lots of sun in the summer, which is very short. So let's just talk about the winter briefly. In the winter we get snow. Sorry, it's the climate, and it snows in the wintertime. Why? Because the sun is the furthest part away from our part of the world. It's as simple as that. When we're not in the sun, it gets cold. It snows. It's simple. Using solar panels in the winter is ridiculous because they get covered in snow. And because the sun is further away, they are even less efficient than they are in the summer. So to rely on solar panels is a non-starter. And let's talk about electric cars. Electric cars need electricity to work. They need to plug in to the grid to work. A battery loses 50% of its charging capability below 0 degrees centigrade. That's 32 in English. We have many days in Canada between October and the end of March when it's below 0 centigrade, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. That means our batteries are operating at only 50% efficiency. Now, if everybody went to an electric car, there wouldn't be enough electricity to be provided to charge them. And they know this. And that's why I come to something else. But you can't talk about this. Let's talk about the next subject. Population. The biggest population in the world is China. They are the biggest threat to population growth. Yet you can't talk about that. We're a threat. The United States is a threat. Britain's a threat. Europe's a threat. Maybe India. You can talk about that one. But you daren't talk about China. They're wonderful people. Let's talk about fake news itself. A phrase coined by President Trump, which has proved to be correct time and time again. Yet you dare not call them fake news. But we do. It's the approved view, again, that can be talked about. Sounds like communism to me. Sounds like a communist state to me. In Canada, pretty much all the media here has been bailed out by Trudeau. So they are totally beholden to him and dare not publish anything about him or his truth. Free speech. This is a very thorny subject in Canada. Trudeau here actually believes he has the right to silence us. He is finding that the opposite is the case. The federal Liberal communists are attempting to nibble away at our constitutional rights. Our constitution. Now I know there are many more subjects that I haven't covered. I'm sure you can think of a few. I saved this one to near the last. The Great Reset. This is being ignored by the so-called mainstream media, which is collapsing day after day, and people don't even realise it. The Great Reset is simple. There are many ways to go through it, but I'll keep it real simple. It's being funded by large global corporations, including banks, wealthy entrepreneurs, evil monarchists, such as Britain's Prince Charles, who is in fact nothing more than a state-funded communist. These people are determined to turn your world upside down. Here's the scary part about this. The elite around the world know about this. This includes 99% of all politicians. How do we know this? Well, because they refuse to talk about it. And you and I are not allowed to debate this in an open forum. Let's just break this down in simple terms. The hook for the average person around the world is simple. You have no debt. Your debt will be expunged. However, for that to happen, you must sign over everything you have to the government of your country today. All your assets. You will own nothing. That's where universal basic income comes in. regardless of what you do. It will be determined what you do and when you do it. Over time, you will be relocated. Your health will be taken care of, but you will have no say on where or when you can go anywhere. You will no longer have access to private transport. You won't have any disposable income. Are you getting the picture yet? Believe me, this is coming unless you stand up. Particularly my American friends. Wake up. Forget the friggin' Super Bowl, which is over now. Forget the impeachment, which is a distraction. Concentrate on this, because this is real. But they don't tell you that the elite will live as before. But people like the communist Charles in London will carry on. Their lives will not change. They will have the life of Riley. They'll be able to travel where or when they want, while you are subject to area commanders. Think this is crazy? It couldn't happen in your country? Think again. You won't be able to rebel. You will be chipped, literally, and monitored. Yes, it will be 1984, but this will be real. Try and talk to your representative about this and see how far you get. They will treat you as a fool and an idiot because they think they will be immune to this. Think again. Oh, I just wanted to touch on Taiwan for a moment. This is something that myself and many others had been talking about would happen if Beijing Biden got in. He would stand back and allow Taiwan to be invaded. Trust me, it's going to happen very, very soon. Biden has given them the green light. Also to Russia. Russia has its eyes on Ukraine yet again. That won't be quite as easy this time. Why? Because Trump has given them nukes. All these subjects I've talked about are verboten. You cannot talk about them, and if you try, you will at least be laughed at, and at worst, deplatformed. And don't think for one moment the worst thing could happen to you is deplatformed. That won't be the end of it. If the Marxist Democrats are not stopped, and that includes their now openly FBI stormtroopers, millions of Americans and others around the world will end up in quote-unquote re-education camps, lightly disguised as COVID isolation centres. You never thought it could happen to you, didn't you? Well, look around right now. Why in the States is your centre of government surrounded by barbed wire? Because maybe they know what's coming. If you allow governments to fine people for walking their dogs and seniors for going to church, what else do you think they're capable of? Where will it end? When you're in an internment camp? When your friend is being shot because he doesn't agree with the government proclamation? Sounds far-fetched, doesn't it? But I don't think it is. And it won't be unless you stand up, have your voice heard, do your thing, join your local party, campaign, stop this lockdown, demand the end to wearing masks, fight back, because we're running out of time. This is not a game. You can't turn it off and go and get a cup of coffee. This is real, and if we don't fight back, there'll be nothing to fight back for.
First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me.
You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, Parler, Spotify, and email. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass these links on to your friends. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com/A-Radio. That's EHRADIO, a radio. And please click on the like button. Join us Monday, Wednesday and Friday, 11:45 Eastern, for our morning moment or tweak. And tell your friends. Pass the word. We only tell the truth, not what the Canadian mainstream media want you to know. This time, more than any in history, we all need to trust but verify.